Hello fellas, Lagoon here, and I am excited. Today, Nintendo decided to just randomly, put out on YouTube, a trailer for Pikmin 3 Deluxe. Just out of nowhere, like what they did with Paper Mario the Origami King. They just put it out on there, just randomly. Wasn't in a mini direct or anything, that was just Pikmin 3 Deluxe. And today we're going to be doing something a bit new. I'm just going to go off the cuffs, talk about Pikmin 3 Deluxe, talk about the new stuff that's going on, and just gush. I'm going to be gushing about Pikmin 3 Deluxe, so let's just get right into that. So Pikmin 3 was my first Pikmin game, and it is, just to get this out of the way, it is a phenomenal game. It is so good, definitely one of the best on the Wii U. So it being ported to the Switch, while I thought it was a bit of an inevitability, it's still surprising, because, there hasn't been, any new Pikmin news for a very long time. This was just out of nowhere. Like I said, they're just gonna drop it out on social media, but hey, any Pikmin news is good Pikmin news, so I know a lot of people are disappointed that it's not Pikmin 4, and I completely understand that since it's been so long since a mainline Pikmin game, but also, it's still Pikmin news. I'm going to take whatever I can get. So, okay, there's gonna be some new content. There's going to be new difficulty modes. And first, let's just talk about that. Difficulty modes. Pikmin 3 was, I think, one of the easiest Pikmin games, but I've never actually finished it, so Pikmin games are very hard even when they're easy, if that makes sense. They are all about time management, and if you look at my upload schedule, you know I'm not very good at that, but, I think difficulty options will make it way easier to get into the series for newcomers, because Pikmin's a bit overwhelming when you just get thrown into it. And also, that's probably, I'm assuming that's going to be an easy mode, and an easier mode than the normal game, and then a hard mode. And I think that hard mode will really make this game a good game for people who have already played Pikmin 3 and people who've played it through, beaten it several times. And I wonder how they're gonna do that with difficulty. Maybe, I want to know, are they just gonna be the enemies have more health, or is it gonna be there are more enemies, a more brutal selection of enemies in certain areas? I don't know, but that could lead to, either way, that could lead to lots of replayability, playing it, making the game harder. And it just makes me wonder, how many difficulty settings will there be? Is there just going to be, a normal, easy, and hard? Is there going to be, super difficult? Is there going to be so difficult that you will break your controller? I don't know, and that's exciting. I think for my first run of the game on the Switch version, I'm going to play it through the normal way, because I actually want to finish the game for once. But, I don't know, maybe the harder difficulty settings will be a fun thing to bring people back, because I remember a lot of people said that Pikmin 3 didn't have that much replayability, and while Pikmin games usually do have tons of replayability, I think that this will make Pikmin 3 specifically extremely replayable, because you can go back and play it, but more difficult. And I think with a game like Pikmin, making it more difficult sounds very fun. And I hope that the difficulty options are extensive. There are a lot of difficulty options and different things to adjust to make sure your experience is either as easy as you want it to be or as hard as you want it to be. Another cool thing to note is that Pikmin 3 originally had some DLC, actually, for its challenge mode. There were a bunch of different challenge modes and loads of levels, but there were packs to buy more. And this deluxe version is going to have those too. It'll have those grouped in with the game like what we were seeing with other Deluxe ports and stuff. And like that's cool. I do think that's very cool. But here's the thing, whenever I heard of Pikmin 3, like the idea of a Pikmin 3 port, I didn't really think about like new content, because there's going to need to be a reason to buy the next, like, or buy this version of the game. Like, Captain Toad had more levels and stuff like that. And this sounds very exciting. They're doing that. And it's going to be new missions which take place before the events of the story. And this is really exciting. After. Like, I mean, before the events of the story, that's awesome. That sounds like a given for extra content, but after. And that makes me extremely excited to see this, because with what happens before the game, we can kind of assume. But this is like the next part of the story. This is what happens next. It's kind of our Pikmin 4, I guess you could say. I doubt that it's definitely not going to be like to the extent of an entire like Pikmin game. But like, this is super exciting. There's going to be content taking place after the main story, it seems, if I am reading the tweets and junk correct. And it's going to be awesome to see what happens next to the characters, and you know, that's very exciting. I can't say that enough. Speaking of new content, they're going to be adding back the Piklopedia from Pikmin 2. And what that was, for those of you who haven't played Pikmin 2 or like Pikmin in general, it was this cool, like, I guess you could compare it to the Pokédex. It tells you like loads of information about the different enemies and stuff that you can find, but what was charming about it and what made it super special was that you got to see each character's views on every enemy. So like, there are two main characters in Pikmin 2, or there were Olimar and Louie. Each of them had a very different take on how they approach, like, a very different take on how they discuss the enemies. Like, Olimar would kind of explain like the biology behind them, how the enemies relate to others in the world, which was a very cool thing from like a world building perspective. But Louie would like describe how to cook them and eat them, which was hilarious, and it gave you a very fun insight to how each character thinks. And the thing with this game is that if you count Olimar and Louie, there are 5 characters. So, assuming that we get these unique perspectives from each of them, that's a lot of world and character building, a lot of new world and character building that we didn't get in the original game. And that's just sweet. I can't wait. Another cool thing that they're adding is like an in-game like badge system. They're kind of like, it reminds me of like Xbox achievements or like PlayStation trophies. They're like little achievements. Kind of what I think they did something similar to the Luigi's Mansion 3DS remake, but they're like little rewards and badges you get for doing little tasks like logging a certain amount of creatures in the Piklopedia. And I can imagine, and I think it's okay to assume that this is probably going to be very extensive. There's probably going to be lots of badges to collect, and like I said before, like, that's a reason for people who played Pikmin 3 before to come back and play it again. And I think that's cool. That's going to change the way, it's probably going to change the way you think about the game, because you're going to be going for certain goals. And I think seeing Pikmin 3, a game that many have played countless times, I think seeing that in a new light is going to be a very cool selling point, and also a cool like thing for completionists. Another thing to note is that like this kind of shows that Nintendo cares about Pikmin, or at least remembers that it exists. I mentioned this earlier, but there's been no Pikmin news for like the past several years since, like, Hey Pikmin on the 3DS, and that was just a spin-off. And seeing, like I said, I know it's not a mainline game, but just any news at all is awesome, because it felt like the series or the franchise was just kind of forgotten. But them making the effort to port this up with brand new, like, story content, that gives me a lot more hope for the future of the series. And, like, I just think that just gives me a lot of hope that Pikmin 4 could be a thing if they are going out of their way to make new content. I think that, like, while it isn't a new game, anything at all is awesome. And it's one, like I said, it's one of the Wii U's best. It's one of the best games from the Wii U moving up. I know a lot of people are annoyed that they port so many Wii U games, but honestly, I think it's great. A lot of people get to experience these new games or like experience these old games, I guess you can call them, in a new way, or like for the first time. Like I've gotten a lot of Switch ports. I mean like Switch ports of Wii U games that I already own, because I enjoy the Switch so much. And to me, it's like, even if they don't add much new content, the portability of the Switch is kind of a selling point. But that brings me into the next topic of the controls. The Wii U game had weird controls. So, like, what you had to do, or like what you could do, is you could use the gamepad with like touch controls or button controls, the Pro controller, the Wii U Pro controller for button controls, and like I think it's like collectively known as the best way to play it, with the Wii remote and the nunchuck, where you could point the cursor with the Wii remote and it felt really good. And I'm assuming that to replicate the feeling of the Wii remote and nunchuck, they're going to do like the separate Joy-Cons off of the Switch. But since there isn't like a sensor bar or anything, I don't know how good that's going to feel. Because like Pikmin with the Wii remote controls, to me, in my opinion at least, is the best way to control a Pikmin game. Like, the button controls and all that, they're just not very... They're not very precise. It's like what you get with FPS games without gyro, where you move the stick over and then you have to make very small adjustments to get exactly where you want to like aim. And I think that they're just gonna go the Joy-Con route and do that, but I'm not too sure how well it's going to work. I remember I've played a bit of the remake of The World Ends With You, and it used the Joy-Con like a Wii remote, but I don't remember it working that well. So it makes me curious about the controls. Like, obviously the Pro controller and all that is going to be the same as the normal button controls, but there's another thing to think about, where like there's a mechanic in Pikmin 3 where you use the gamepad to tell characters that you weren't controlling where to go. So like, or you could like say I'm trying to go and complete an objective, so I can go send off a different character to go and do a different objective while I'm doing this. So that leads to the whole like real-time strategy, time management feel of it. And I have to wonder, it's probably going to be assigned to a button instead of the gamepad, or like instead of touch controls this time. Like, I'm assuming that there's going to be touch controls for handheld mode, but the Go Here function, I think that's what it was called. Will be mapped to a button instead of the gamepad. Because like, even if you were playing, this is a weird thing about Pikmin 3, even if you were playing with the Wii remote and nunchuck, you had to have the gamepad there to do the Go Here function if you want to use that, which is very, very useful. So it's not that much of an option to not use it. I guess you could play without it, but like if you wanted to use all of the game's controls, you had to have a Wii Remote, the nunchuck, and the gamepad with you nearby for the Wii Remote setup. And that's probably going to lead to... that can either lead to Pikmin 3 having, like, all these changes from, like, the Wii U's controllers to the Switch's controllers can either lead to, like, it feeling a lot better or it feeling somehow more clunky, if that makes sense. Like the Joy-Cons, I don't know how good they're going to be as a Wii Remote substitute, because like I said, a lot of games have tried that. But I don't know, we'll have to see. I think it'll control well. I'm gonna be optimistic about that. But maybe without the gamepad, it's probably gonna be a lot more smoother and a lot more easier to play without you having to switch between the controllers in your hands and the one in the gamepad close by. And like you had the Wii Remote strap on, so it'll just kind of dangle there as you try and use the gamepad. It worked, but it wasn't ideal. And I don't know why they didn't assign it to a button beforehand, but that's most likely what they're going to do here. I want to talk about this again. The new story content, like I said, that gives me hope for Pikmin 4, or like just more Pikmin content in general, because that's brand new story stuff. That's not just like past DLC being put into the game, or just like new characters or something. That's a brand new story, a brand new chapter or chapters taking place before the main story and afterward. So I think like they're going to follow Olimar and Louis before they came like wrapped up with the main story of the 3 characters that you control. And like I said, afterward. And I don't know how long these sections are going to be. Maybe they're going to be like short things, but they could be substantial. They have the potential to really be something substantial and something to help hold over Pikmin fans onto the next game, if there even will be a next game. So yeah, there's going to be new story content, a new achievement system, there's going to be all the past DLC, difficulty options. All of this, I think, will make for a very good port. If it just comes down to the feel of the game and how it works with the Joy-Cons, but I have faith. I think that it will play very well. And I'm super excited. It comes out October 30th. And I don't think I've ever been this excited for a port, so this is great. It's been a good day. So, yeah, I think that about wraps it up. I'm very excited for Pikmin 3 Deluxe. It's looking very promising as not only a port, but a Pikmin game. And we'll just have to see. I'm all for Wii U ports and all that stuff, and this might become one of the best. And at the end of the day, it's Pikmin news. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. Tell me in the comments if you guys want to see more of these, like, general, just off-the-cuff, unscripted discussion type videos. I guess I'm pretty open to doing more if this was fun. But yeah, let me know what you think. And we got Pikmin news. We finally got Pikmin news. It's been so long.